Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, Purvi, for the introduction. Again, this is a brief journey about my iPSL time as CISO there, and it correlates to progress, as mentioned, with my computer ownership history. As covered, I'm a security leader, a board advisor, and mentor with over 35 years' experience in IT and security. 15 years of that was in the military, and 20 years of that was in financial service roles. I run a cyber consultancy company offering various services, and as mentioned, when I'm not busy with cyber, I like to produce electronic dance music, signed to a UK label, and I also love retro gaming, and that will be apparent throughout the rest of the show. A little bit of history. So iPSL, or Intelligent Processing Solutions Limited, is a joint venture formed 25 years ago between a global IT support company and 3 of the major UK high street banks. We perform various business processing activities, and one of our main areas is check processing, where we produce over 195 million checks a year, worth about £250 billion. I was brought into iPSL by a newly appointed CEO. He wanted to transform the small security service, which was tucked away right in the depths of IT, as most organisations' security teams are, and he wanted to bring it to the centre of the business. He wanted me to come along, increase visibility, increase value, and the maturity of the current capabilities that we had on offer. Within the first 30 days, it was mainly about meeting the team and the wider business stakeholders. The team itself consisted of information security manager, and we had 2 senior risk analysts who were dragged into security so we could have some form of security team there. We had a graduate onboarded who was quite technically minded, so he was responsible for managing the outsourced SOC service, running all the vulnerability scanning, all of the pen testing, all of the DLP, so quite a lot of responsibilities on a young person who just joined the organisation. On top of that, we had an apprentice who was on loan from the IT Services Centre, and they were doing all of the administrative work. And to say there was a lot of Excel, that is an understatement. That's pretty much all they did day in, day out. We had basic controls in place, similar to the computer system up there, but we had very little visibility across the organisation. We had very few and limited processes in place. We had very little documentation, and it's pretty similar to most organisations. But no visibility across the organisation and absolutely no influence whatsoever. So it was going to be a very difficult challenge to turn things around at iPSL. In computing terms, it's very equivalent to the late 1970s, early 80s computing services, where although it was classed as an 8-bit system, you can see it was only just an 8-bit system. My first 90 days at the organisation included 60 days speaking to, but mainly listening to the business. I wanted to see how we could help them as a security function. I wanted to know what their pain points were, what their issues were, and how security could help solve those problems. I did a complete gap analysis and maturity oversight of the whole of our organisation. People, processes, technology, all were covered off and scaled and used industry frameworks to get an accurate picture of what the organisation looked like. The end result was an 80-plus page security strategy document, and it contained a CISO charter. And it was important that I had a CISO charter because that clearly explained to the business what they could expect from the current and future cybersecurity teams. But more importantly, it let the business know what we needed them to help us and support with so that we could all succeed. It was very important that we had the whole business buy in. The rest of the security strategy covered in depth the maturity of all the services provided. It listed what current gaps, what plans we had in place to turn things around, and it was there to help realise the vision of the CEO and the board who'd brought us in to help with their good to great journey. In computing terms, we were still in 8-bit territory, I think it's fair to say, but we had a clear pathway to improved capabilities. We had more robust and meaningful controls, we had good metrics, we had comprehensive plans, and we're starting to provide better value for money and wider awareness across the business.
Layers activated.
next few weeks and few months were spent on delivering some of the low-hanging fruits, the quick wins that we could deliver that had immediate value to the organisation and let them see that the security team were actually making an impact. We still progressed some of the big ticket items in the background, and we began recruiting in earnest. We formed a cybersecurity team, as well as strengthening our existing information security capabilities. We started to leverage appropriate metrics. We had communications paths enabled. We started various committees to help spread the word and enforce all of the Charter's narratives. All team members began participating in business partnering sessions where everybody in the security team, from the lowest analyst all the way up to myself, had at least 2 to 3 business partner meetings with various colleagues across the business every month. And that served multiple purposes. One of the purposes were we could let them know what we were doing as a security team, what initiatives we were working on. But again, it was then to find out what the business were also working on, because as security was a relatively new team that not many people knew about, we wanted to get ahead, find out what projects were happening across the business so we could help from a security perspective and get involved as early as possible. And this was a big cultural shift at the organisation. But more than that, it was giving everybody in the business at least one friendly face that they could reach out to in the security team, which is very important when you're trying to change the whole culture. And the biggest thing that it does, it brings trust within the business. People tend to think of security as a team who says no, or they're like the police, you can't trust them, don't tell them anything. But we wanted to change that mindset and let people know that we were there to help them, to let us all succeed. This was a big turning point in my journey. We left behind the restrictive 8-bit journey and moved into the exciting 16-bit chapter of our company. After the initial cultural impetus and strategic delivery, we continued at pace. The organisation was moving towards a huge technical transformational shift. We were moving all of our services and applications from our on-premise data centres into public cloud. This was unknown territory for our organisation. And due to the technical seismic changes and the ways of working that had constantly changed across the whole business, it was inevitable that we were going to face some kind of delay. But throughout that time period, I stepped forward, I used my knowledge and experience of previous business transformations at other organisations to stand up and let the organisation know I provided appropriate oversight, assurance, governance and security leadership to help the organisation not only deliver the cloud programme, but deliver it in a secure and safe manner. I didn't want security to become a blocker, so we worked as closely with business to help alleviate problems as early as we could to make the smooth transition. I was able to achieve some of the strategic security improvements during this time. Existing services and capabilities were reviewed and replaced if they just weren't fit for purpose. We started to leverage a cloud-first approach, and that way allowed us to try new technologies and bring on new skills and then help our staff gain new skills, new qualifications, and help them have a future career rather than relying on existing technology. We moved all of our processes away from heavy, manual, repetitive tasks and automated and optimized wherever we could. We leveraged that cloud technology to help us. One of the key technologies we brought in place was SenseOn, and that really helped us change from a very much reactive, small security team to being proactive and actually analysing the threat landscape and using that to our advantage to build the appropriate controls and focus on where we needed to be. Again, this was a major shift, moving from the exciting 16-bit technology into 32-bit levels.
Astartes support.
Thank you, Lord. We shall ready again.
Once the cloud journey was complete, my work did not stop. And because check processing is a declining business and the processing cost per check is one of our key metrics, we have to continually strive to provide the best value and service for our customers and clients as possible. Straight off the back of our cloud delivery, we moved into planning and executing one of the next largest things an organisation can do. We moved from our 2,500 strength capacity head office of 25 years into a small premises that only holds 200 people. So the vast majority of our workforce changed from an office-based role to working from home, which brought its own challenges as well. But again, helping to keep that cost of check down was one of the key reasons and drivers behind this. I perform continuous reviews of people, processes and technology in that order, and that's the order I see of the most importance, touching on the points earlier about people. And I have to constantly deliver an enabling security service, which is constantly doing more with less. I have to continue to deliver coverage throughout major business changes, legal, regulatory, and client force changes. I now have 3 teams covering information security, cybersecurity, and user and system access. All of our processes are heavily optimized and automated. We have always-on controls, which are aligned to the same industry frameworks and standards. We're able to react to changes in the ever-evolving threat landscape. With the tool set that we've got, as it's all aligned to the same frameworks, it makes it a lot more simple. And it helps us deal with incidents as soon as we can within the cyber kill chain to make sure that there's less impact across the business. We provide maximum resilience to all our services we provide to our clients. We're now running an effective and highly focused operation, adding not only business value and great performance, but it's equivalent to a 64-bit system. And now if you look at the contrast between where we were from the 8-bit solutions when I started a little over 3 years ago, we're now to 64-bit systems. But we all have to start somewhere. So wherever you are in that journey, if you're at the 8 bits, the 16 bits, 32 bits, you can always get to the 64 bits, but you have to remember where you started from and always keep that at the back of mind, what you've achieved. And without those 8-bit services to start as a foundation, you'll never get to 64-bit. And that's my presentation finished. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Got a few minutes left, so is there any questions anybody wants to ask about myself or SenseOn while I'm here?
How did you manage the board to read the 180 pages strategy?
So the 80-page strategy was shared across the whole business, but for the board, we have things called town halls, so I managed to present a very short brief. These are the main highlights, because the board's not going to read an 80-page document. However, the CEO was very keen, signed it off, read it from cover to cover. But yeah, from an exec perspective, given the high-level details, what's in it for them, how we're going to get there, and they signed it off straight away. So, and it was important that the board wanted me there in the first place, which I think makes a big difference. So they were fully supportive. No problems. Anybody else?
A little bit off topic, but what is the future for checks with the advent of digital transactions?
So checks, there's still no end date. So all of our free clients, we've got currently about 80% of the market. So clients are asking industry, how long has check got left? They keep saying, well, there's probably 5 years left, but they've been saying that for the last 15 years. So that's part of the problem as well. When you've got no end game, it's very difficult to know how long it's going to last. So you have to try and plan for the future, but not too far ahead of the future because there may not be a future. So it's just constantly adapting to changes in regulations, and data protection laws, things like that. So yeah, it's very difficult. So anybody else?
What was your biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge is, as a joint venture, you've got 4 different organisations, 3 of them are competing banks with their own objectives, and trying to get them all to pull in the same direction is nigh impossible. It is literally like herding cats. So trying to get all of the banks to agree on what direction, or getting them in a room in the first place to agree on the direction, is probably the biggest challenge. Okay.
Is there anything left on your Sabre roadmap or significantly is still wondering about?
To be honest, things like AI and further adopting that to help optimize even further. So as an organization, cost per check is having an impact. So we've seen a lot of changes as we move to cloud. A lot of departments have sort of streamlined their operations. So target operating models have changed dramatically over the last 3 to 4 years. So from my perspective, it's just making sure that we can carry on to deliver extra services without losing any people. So that's my main goal. So leveraging AI, new technologies to help the team keep their skill set and keep them trained enough so that they want to stay at iPSL, however long the future is. So again, that's one of the challenges as well. So making sure we keep our people trained is one of my top priorities to keep forward on the roadmap.
Hello, quick question.
So you initially mentioned that when you were implementing the strategy that you were focusing on the easy wins. What were some examples of those easy wins?
Yes, so from the quick and simple things like making sure you've got the relevant controls in place. We had a bare minimum of controls. We had lots of KRIs in place which weren't really adding any value. They were more pointing out sort of failures within what the security team were doing. It's, oh, you failed to, this amount of people haven't done their mandatory training. So it was very much negatively focused. So I introduced some KPIs which showed what value we were adding at the beginning. They were quite basic KPIs, but again, that showed immediate value to the board and the organisation on where we were delivering. Some of the straightforward things, just adding additional controls in place, were things that we did, make sure that we had processes. Rather than all that knowledge in people's heads, we make sure it was written down, and then we used senior analysts to write the processes, so whenever we got those new members of staff starting, they started to use the processes that had been written to help improve them and keep streamlining them. So very effective, simple tasks to do, which didn't cost any money, but helped improve what we were doing. I think 5 seconds left, I think, so I'm not sure if we get time for anything else, but
Yes,
thank you very much.
thanks so much, Martin.
Cheers, thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much.